if you're 18 years of age or after 18 years of age, you have a job, you should make a will. Right?
Okay.
There is this concept again in India that, oh, the will, I am not rich, only the rich need to make a will. Only people who have something need to make a will. Only old people need to make a will.
Yeah.
That's totally not true, right? You don't need to be rich or old to make a will.
Correct.
The moment you are past 18 years of age, you're earning something, you have your own assets, make a will. If you get married, certainly make a will. When you have children, all the more reason to make a will.
Hi, we are the Confident Communicator, and I am Seema Mehta, along with my partner, Deepma Jadeja. Welcome to Imperfect Parenting. Together, let's get on a journey of discovering kindness, success, and happiness courageously, fearlessly, and by holding ourselves to a standard of grace, not perfection. It is our mission at the Confident Communicator to empower kids and adults discover their own uniqueness through our coaching, training, and soft skills program. We welcome you to a new chapter of Imperfect Parenting, a series dedicated to discovering our own uniqueness without judgment by chiseling away all superfluous materials within ourselves.
Hi everyone, this is Seema Mehta from the Confident Communicator, along with Deepma Jadeja, my partner. We're here to talk about a very solemn topic, but I think our goal is to actually convert that into a more intelligent topic. In India, we worry a lot about one thing, which is creating a will. It's a conversation that we don't like to have. But let's take a step back. As parents, what is our most important task? We want to give our children safety, security, a lot of love, a lot of unconditional support, but that also includes financial planning. And our guest today is an amazing friend, Kaushal Dalal. Did I say Kaushal Dalal? Sorry. Yeah, Kaushal Dalal, who's a chartered accountant and a certified financial planner by qualification. He has worked in amazing companies like Arthur Andersen, Star TV, and Times of India. Even though he's not a lawyer by profession, he is very passionate about the idea of creating a will. And he has created his own company which is called IndianWillmaker.com. Am I right? Where users can make a will online in complete privacy. And I have a very, very important question for you, Kaushal. Thank you so much for being on our show. One question I want to ask you is, in the West, a will is looked at as part of a financial plan. While in India, we look at creating a will. The Indian parents look at creating a will as something not very auspicious. We don't want to talk about it. We are very reticent about it. So what is your view on why this is so, and why is creating a will important?
So you're right, Seema, that in India, anything that has to do with talking about death, superstition plays a huge role. So, people think that if they talk about death, it will actually happen.
Yes.
Pretty well forgetting that it's going to happen to everyone at some point in time. And therefore, planning for it is important. Sometime back, life insurance had the same issue that, it's similar that, it's talking about death. And it's basically about end of life planning.
Correct.
Over a period of time, life insurance has become less of a stigma. People talk about it, people invest in it. But a very important part is, a will. Now, what happens in the case of a life insurance is that you're depending upon somebody else to give you money upon the passing away of somebody.
Right.
Whereas in a will, you're really talking about how your own assets are getting passed on to somebody.
Correct.
So I think will is an equally important part, of a succession plan. And you are right in saying that it actually is pretty much a part of a financial plan. So, if you don't have a will, your financial plan is incomplete, your investments are incomplete, because I would imagine that one of the key things that people invest and save for is the future, not just their own, but also of their loved ones.
Absolutely.
And if you're not able to give that money to your loved ones
Yes.
in a smooth manner, then there is something missing from your financial plan.
I
Absolutely.
completely agree, Kaushal. Before we go deeper into the concept of a will, can I ask you a question? Because that's something that's on, on the top of the mind of almost everyone that I've spoken to, and that is that if something happens to me, doesn't everything automatically pass on to my next of kin? So why do I have to? I understand the financial planning and all, but I just want everything to go to my spouse, whoever, and my children. So is there something deeper in it than that?
Well, if that is what you wanted, why not say it pretty much in a will, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing.
Correct.
Second thing is that people
So that is
are
not
actually,
automatic. That is not an automatic assumption.
it may not be. So depending upon who is in your family, it may not be and it may not automatically go to your loved ones. So for example, married women, if the husband passes away, and if the mother-in-law is still alive, then the mother-in-law also gets a share. And so some of the property could go to the mother-in-law, and then depending upon the mother-in-law's will, that property will be shared later on. So it is not automatic that things will definitely go only to yourself and to your kids if something were to happen to your husband. Same way the other way around as well, right? So it depends upon who is in the family that things would go to.
That's
Absolutely.
very interesting, because it's not just about the mother-in-law, right? It's about the fact that once it goes to the mother-in-law, then again all of her children get equal access to it. So that is something that we have to think through, and that's the reason why we make a will. Now, can a will just be a simple note saying, I want my husband, I want my wife to get everything?
The will is actually the least legal of all legal documents. So, the court gives quite a large amount of leeway in interpretation of a will. But there are certain things which are required when you make a will. So one is that you have to be over 18 years of age.
Okay.
Secondly, is that you have to be of sound mind.
Yeah.
Right. And I would imagine anybody watching this program would be of sound mind.
Of sound mind. Yes.
One must hope.
We hope so. And the last one is, of course, you need to have two witnesses who are signing the will. So then that would make it a legally valid will.
Valid document. Yeah. But
apart from that, you heard that a will actually need not be on that green paper. Not, that long paper. It need not be notarized. It in fact does not even need to be registered.
Right.
Okay.
No, but I want to take a step back. I know we are going to talk a little bit detail about what is a will, what is a legal document of it, what is the process, who is involved, is it legal, not legal? We'll get into all those details. But I want to take a little bit of step back because I think this is an important conversation to have. Why is it that Indian parents are so reticent about talking about the will? And I know you touched upon a few points where let's talk about it as parents, right? What do we want to do for our kids? We want to make sure that they are financially secure. And things happen, right? Tragedies happen in life. Somebody may fall sick suddenly. A child's education can get interrupted. Their financial security may be in question. There are so many issues that go on with creating a will. I think there's a bit of a reticence about, it is inauspicious, or let's not talk about it because we don't want to talk about death. We don't talk about death in our religion or in our families. Those kind of things are there. But if we change the perspective from calling a will as something we are talking about death, why not talk about it as something that is included in the financial plan? So now, last week or a week before that, we had a guest who was a financial planner, and she talked to us about the importance of money. And she said something very important, which is money does not define you and money should not define you. And I think, can we say safely then that will doesn't mean that you are talking about death? Another guest of ours who was a CEO of a suicide prevention company said, people don't want to talk about suicide as if I talk about it, it will happen. And you said exactly the same thing. When we talk about a will, it almost sounds like we are talking about death. How do we then separate these two things and look at it purely from a financial planning perspective? And can you tell us why it is important to have a will?
Take out the emotion. Na?
Let's take out the emotion out of it. And let's talk about why it is important for our children, for our spouse, and for our family.
Okay, so actually, in some sense, emotion does play a role, and I'll come to that later on. But in India, in general, apart from the fact that it is inauspicious to talk about death, there are several reasons why people actually don't prepare a will. And take your pick. The first is that a lot of people that I've spoken to, generally say, "Oh, I don't have anything to give away." Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily true. You can have something which is of emotional value to you.
Yes.
Some people say that I'm still too young, I have time. Now, unless you're Bhishma,
Yes.
you really don't know, and shit happens in life, right? The one certainty about life is its ability to surprise.
Yes. Yes.
So things happen. A lot of people have this thing that, in my investments, I already have put in a nomination.
Yeah.
And because I have nominated people, I really don't need a will.
Correct.
Now, that actually is incorrect, because a nominee, apart from a life insurance policy, a nominee in every other case, in general, is somebody who's a trustee. He's not a legal heir. So anybody who is a nominee means that that person is holding in trust for the actual legal heir.
So, for example, when somebody holds some assets like equity shares, right, and you have a nominee, just because the person, the original holder, has passed away, doesn't mean that it goes to the nominee. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So let me take the example of what I said before. So if a husband passes away and the husband has put as a nominee his wife.
Yes.
Right. Now, if the husband passes away, the companies and all that automatically pass things and transfer things to the nominee. In this case, actually transmit things to the nominee. However, if the mother-in-law is still alive, she can pretty much go to court and say that, listen, I have, under the Indian Succession Act, I have a right to some of this property. And then the court will rule in our favor that, the nominee is only a trustee. Right. It is not that, even once things get transmitted in that sense to that person, that person becomes the absolute owner. So, you always have this sword sort of hanging over your head in that sense.
Right.
So nomination is not enough. So, a lot of people are under that misconception that a nomination hai to abhi will kya zarurat hai. So that's not quite correct.
That is one misconception we need to clear out. Okay.
Yeah. And just a follow up to that, then, Kaushal, you just brought to my mind, what if the husband passes away or the wife passes away, the nomination is the spouse. So it goes to the spouse. But what if there are adult children? Can the adult children then say, no, this belongs to me?
Yes, of course.
Oh my gosh.
Because it passes in a proportion to, under the Indian Succession Act, it passes in proportion to a bunch of people, right? Right. So that's why, nomination simply is not enough.
Very true.
And, people have all manner of things, and they say that, oh, I'm so busy creating wealth, I really don't have the time to pass it on.
Correct.
And the biggest thing, and this is where the emotion sort of comes in, is that I can't decide who to give the property to.
Correct.
Right. So if you have a wife, if you have parents, if you have children, now if amongst the children also, now there can be confusion. So there is a little bit of confusion that then prevails. So the confusion could be that, okay, so if you have all sons, no problem, you can equitably distribute. If you have all daughters, no problem, equitably
divided equally.
Now when there are sons and when there are daughters, that's when now you have to, people are forced to use their mind. Oh, what if the daughter gets married into a rich family? What if she gets married into a poor family? Should I give to her share? Should I not give her share? So all those complications come up, and then people just defer the decision.
Correct.
Yes.
Because it may not be an easy answer. They may not have an easy answer.
So we do, at some point in time during this program, I would like to sort of help people with, sort of deciding. But, these are all the excuses why people actually don't end up making the will. And the financial plan is absolutely incomplete without it.
And traditionally, in India, we have always assumed that when a parent passes away, their property goes to the son. It doesn't necessarily go to the daughter. But I know that there is a law against that now, or there's a law that now supports the daughters, where they say that daughters and sons both have an equal right to the assets of the parent or the father. So I think that is another reason why a will is then becomes very critical, because then it has to be the will of the parent. They should be able to decide. It doesn't matter whether the daughter is married to a rich person or a poor person. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's about being fair, because let's face it, our family dynamics are also changing. We are not no longer in joint families. We are in nuclear families now. So it's not like the son is all the time living with the father and therefore automatically that house goes to him. There is no such thing. I think a parent can now decide equally to divide between all their children, and that can
but Seema, you sort of put the nail on the head, right? So it requires evolved thinking on the part of parents.
Yes.
That, daughter is equally a part of the family now or in future. Yes. In fact, I have noticed that daughter is more a part of the family than a son in future.
That is very true. But there is one thing I remember you mentioning to me, Kaushal, is that you speak to a lot of women about this concept of will. I know we talked about it a little bit earlier, but why do you think that women play an important role in a household when the conversation about or initiating a will comes about? Why do you think they are important?
I think, in my experience, in a lot of cases, even though they may not be closely involved, they are the trigger points for somebody making a will.
Okay.
If the women understands what issues there are, and the kind of issues, so they might not actually be involved in the financial aspect and all that. So sometimes when the husband is making most of the investments and he's taking the financial decisions, there is a bit of a scare as to what will happen if something were to happen to the husband.
Correct.
Right. And those women who are actually involved in working and all of that, they are generally then even more financially aware.
Right. Right.
So for one reason or the other, I have noticed that if you talk to women, they are more likely to make sure that, the family is making a will.
Absolutely. And as a woman, mostly as a mother, women are most concerned and they take up the role of a nurturer, right? And one of the reasons why it is important to create a will for children is that if anything happens to any of the parents, you do not want to stop their progress in life. So, because parents are responsible for their education, for their upbringing, for their security, safety, all of those things. Sure. So, if you have things clearly, lined up for the children, and if they are minors, if the parents pass away when they are minors, that can create a huge problem for those children, because it depends on who's taking care of them after that. So, nominating a person to take care of their children and having a clear will really makes things a little bit simpler, don't you think?
Yeah, Seema. So, and that's another important point that you brought up, that, if you pass away without making a will, and there is, you and your wife, who generally tend to travel together.
Yeah.
If they pass away, then the question is that who will physically take care of the children?
Yes.
It would generally go to, they would generally go to a close family member, as per law. And that is not what you might want. I know in certain cases where the parents would prefer that the physical upkeep of the children goes to somebody else.
Right.
And they have specified that in their will.
Right.
And now these people may not be financially aware. So, they have a guardian who is going to take care of the children while they are minor.
Right.
And then they have a guardian for some of their financial assets, who is a separate person.
Correct.
And who's financially aware of how to make sure that the investments are made properly and don't suffer.
Right. Absolutely.
So it's important that, you think through some of these things and you sort of pen them down.
Yes. Yes. So there is obviously the emotional side of it, right? We are like, it's a very scary subject. I don't really want to talk about it. And it sounds like a legal mumbo jumbo. If somebody has to start thinking about creating a will, what is a good starting point? Is there a person they need to go to? Is there a website, like you have created your own website for this? Can you kind of guide the parents on how they can start the process of creating a will? And at what stage should they begin? When, at what time, at what stage should they do it? After the children are born? Should they do it when the children are reaching 18 years of age? Can you give us some idea of how to get started?
Well, if you're 18 years of age, or after 18 years of age, you have a job, you should make a will. Right? There is this concept again in India that, the will, I am not rich, only the rich need to make a will. Only people who have something need to make a will. Only old people need to make a will.
Yeah.
That's totally not true, right? You don't need to be rich or old to make a will.
Correct. Correct.
The moment you are past 18 years of age, you're earning something, you have your own assets, make a will. If you get married, certainly make a will. When you have children, all the more reason to make a will.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so there is
literally after 18, you should, once you start working, you should start making a will. Okay, that's very interesting. We didn't know that.
Yeah.
And how do they get started? What is the first step? Like, what do they do?
So the first step is, of course, some internal thinking in terms of how would you like your property to be distributed? Because, a will actually, if you go to see, is a very simple document. It is basically about who do you want to give your property to?
Correct.
Right? And because you're not going to be around to make sure about I'm sorry.
When you talk about property, can you elaborate? Is it just your apartment, your land, your like what do we?
No, when I say property, I mean all assets.
Everything.
Whether they are movable, immovable, all assets, whether they are,
your
money,
shares,
whether they have value in money, whether they have value in emotion, whatever it is.
Everything. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
So it's all of that, right? So basically, it is about who do you want to leave your assets to, and because you're not going to be around to, make sure that those assets are going to those people.
Yeah.
You need to appoint somebody who's going to oversee that distribution. That person is typically called an executor.
Got it.
Right, and because you are penning this thing down, you need to make sure that there are two witnesses who say that yes, what he has written and this was done in my presence.
He has written it in sound mind. Yeah.
In simple terms, that is the will, right? So the starting point is that, okay, I have certain assets. There are some things which are of emotional value to me. And, I think this person will sell it off, this person may not. So it's basically a bunch of those kind of things. So you have to think to yourself as to who you want to give your property to.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you are not sure what happens, like you have, multiple children and you are now confused about who to give the property to.
Yeah.
You can speak to some lawyer. Our website, indianwillmaker.com, also actually guides you once you fill in who are the members of your family.
Right.
It gives you a very broad guidance in terms of how you should distribute your property.
Yeah.
Of course, you need to review your relationship with those people.
Right.
But broadly, and it is fairly simple. I mean, if you have a spouse, there's an order in which things pass.
Correct. So from one spouse to another, and followed by the children.
So the priority is that if you have a spouse, let's say you even have parents.
Yes.
And you even have children. Now you got everybody in the family, right? This is where confusion sets in.
Correct.
So the priority really should be that if you got a spouse, you love her, I'm assuming, give everything to the spouse, right? Because the spouse is going to take care of your children.
Yes.
So give everything to the spouse. If and here's the important part of making a will is that the will must outlast you.
Yes.
That's the whole point of the will.
That is the whole point. Absolutely.
Right. So therefore, you must have alternates.
Yes.
That all of my assets, first instance, go to my wife.
Right.
And because I love my wife and because we travel together, it is possible that something were to happen to both of us. In that event, things would go to my children.
Okay.
Right. And you can
and
always
in such and such order.
Yeah. So spouse first. Then if spouse is also not alive at the time of my passing away, then the children.
Yes.
And then, and you can always provide for certain amounts to take care of your parents.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Right.
I
think it's a bit warped if you have a wife to pass everything to your parents.
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, this is so valid because we had a similar situation in our family and we had someone exactly like you, Kaushal, who came to us and helped us out with the situation where the father, the patriarch of the family was creating a will, and because he felt that the wife may not be financially capable, was going to leave everything to the sons. And the person who came in to us as a helper and a witness and, to help us make the will, said no, because there are so many instances we see then of the sons or the children taking away all of the assets, and then the mother gets completely left out because the spouse didn't think about her, right? Thinking and assuming, making that assumption that the children are going to remain just as loving throughout life. And that may not happen. So you have to make sure that everyone that you want to take care of, you better do it very clearly right now, and not, and not.
No, and I think as parents, I think it's very important for us to have this conversation. I mean, we don't have to involve our children in the conversation early on, because they may get traumatized as a result of that conversation. But I think as partners and as husband, wife, I think it's important to start thinking, apart from the financial planning, which you are anyway going to do, right? Whether it is buying property or buying jewelry or buying shares or whatever it is, this has to be part of your financial planning thing. That's it. That's what it is. There's nothing else in it. We don't talk about trauma. We don't talk about death. We don't talk about inauspicious, none of those things. We are only simply making it as part of the financial plan, right?
No, right. And I think the second reason why we don't do it is the inertia. अब कल कर लेंगे.
No, I think it's
long weekend आएगा तब कर लेंगे.
No, because people feel that they have time on their hands, and the first assumption that you must make is that you never know what happens when. Better to just get this out of the way.
Correct.
And Deepma, you also raised another point which I'd like to sort of elaborate on a little bit.
Yeah.
Is that, and it is actually a part of financial planning, because the whole idea of a financial plan is to make life simple, right? For us. That's the whole idea why we save. We want to make life simple. We want to enjoy life and all of that.
Yeah.
And if you don't make a will, life is not going to be simple. I mean, your wife, your children are actually going to run around trying to get things organized. The court will appoint somebody to oversee the distribution of your property in case there's some issue. So all these issues will come up, and you're going to take time away from them, from their busy life or whatever that they are doing, to run around trying to get this thing
and the
organized.
Paperwork mounts up, right? The paperwork just mounts up. It's like, if you don't have a clear indication of where the assets are divided, that's going to be a mess. You're going to be in a legal mess there.
And then do you think you're going to be fondly remembered by these people? Obviously not, right? I mean, they're going to say, "Arey, aisa kaisa karke gaya?"
Yeah,
no problem.
Yeah,
absolutely. So I think you're right.
Kaushal, I just want to go a little, 1 second, Seema. I just wanted to go a little further in that example where I talked about, so you should leave everything to the surviving spouse, right? And then goes to the children, as the financial planner told us. But now, how does, if the lady or the surviving spouse is not capable of financial decision making, then how do we also help, mostly in India, her to deal with the inheritance that comes? Because otherwise we leave it to our sons, we leave it to our children, and we have no idea what's going on. So how do can we appoint, like in a will, can we appoint someone who will be her advisor or something?
Like an executor or something?
No, so the executor actually is only a person who makes sure that the assets get distributed according to
the will. Yeah.
But it's a bit odd to appoint a financial advisor in a will, because remember that, as I said earlier, the will must outlive you. So what happens is that if the financial advisor is also no longer around at the time when but this famous saying is that zindagi sab kuch sikha deti hai. That applies. So once the money comes to the wife, she is not aware in terms of where to put the money on that. She will get somebody who she trusts as the financial advisor.
Right.
Who she is comfortable with, rather than who the husband is comfortable with.
Yeah.
Correct.
So, and this is all I'm assuming, that the husband is passing away. But so you let the person who's getting the money decide upon who and how to seek the advice for that.
Absolutely. And I think that we are still in a scenario in India, and I think everywhere in the world, where women are not taking active participation in the financial planning of a family. Although they do have opinions about it, they may not get into the nitty-gritty of it. And I know that your website, the Indian Will Maker, is actually making it very simple, right? Can you talk a little bit about why you got into this? And I know you're not a lawyer by profession, but you are a financial planner, you are a chartered accountant, and you do a lot of talks convincing people that they should create a will, which I think everybody should. I mean, I think we should stop worrying about the whole death part of it, but really think about our children and make it easy for them. So tell us how you got into creating this website, and why is it that you feel so passionate about it?
So this happened almost 10 or 12 years back when I wanted to make a will. The first instinct is to go online to get help.
Yes.
In those days, there was precious little available on the web about making a will. And most of that, what was available was largely made by lawyers, which made it extremely difficult to, for a common or a lay person to understand what is a will and how one should go about doing it and all of that.
Right.
So I reached out to a lawyer friend of mine who was a partner in a pretty big law firm. And I told him, will banana hai, why don't you help me? So he tells me, and I'm known as KD. So he tells me, KD, you've done enough legal agreements, you've done enough business development and mergers and all of that. So you are well versed with legal. Why don't you make your will and then I will review it in true legal partner style, right? Okay. You do the work, I will review it. So I said, okay, chalo. So I made the will and I sort of sent it off to him. After 2 days, he gives me a call and said that, KD, I'll tell you what, tu mera will bana. Because this is so well thought through and I haven't I haven't thought of a bunch of these things,
which is so ironic, right? Because we started the whole episode by saying it has to be part of the financial planning, nothing else. And here you are, a financial planner yourself. Obviously you would be the best person to create a will, and it just came out, right? That's amazing.
And so I thought that, there isn't anything available online. I seem to have done a decent job with it. Yeah. So then I got involved. I read up a lot about the Indian Succession Act, the Hindu Marriage Act, a bunch of other things. And then I put this website together.
Yeah.
In a manner that anybody who's a lay person can come in, look at it and very easily understand and very simplistically understand with no legal language as to what it is and how to go about doing it.
Correct. And you mentioned earlier that it is not, you don't have to make it on a stamp paper or anything like that. You can just create it on the website, print it out, and have 2 witnesses sign it. It's as simple as that, right?
Yeah, you can pretty much, if you don't want to go to a website, if you're very clear in your mind what you want to do it, handwrite it, get it signed by 2 witnesses, it's good enough.
That's also good enough. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be that very scary looking legal document. It can.
Yeah. Although there are certain couple of things that you need to take care of, legal things, which is what the website actually does. So it prevents you from making certain, legal and logical errors.
Okay.
Correct. Can you give us some examples?
What kind of errors?
So for example, it is very simple. So when you make a will, you must specify which assets go to which person.
Right.
You must have an executor to oversee the distribution of those assets. And you must have 2 witnesses.
Right.
Now, the only legal thing is that typically the people who you're leaving your property to should not be the witness to your will.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And in some religions, it is also better if the executor is not a witness. So it is better to not have the beneficiary of the will, that is people who you're leaving the money to, or the executor to be witnesses. So witnesses must be 2 separate people. They need not even read your will. They have to just make sure that you're signing in their presence.
Right. So tell me something, when I know you go for a lot of talks and you talk to a lot of people about creating wills and stuff like that, or also even in your, when you're doing financial planning, what kind of questions do you get from parents and from spouses, and what are the common questions that they ask you when creating a will?
Well, there are all kinds, most of the times it's a lot more technical questions that, I have done the nomination. Do I need to make a will?
Right.
And largely there are some questions people don't actually open up about the emotional aspect, right? That I have so many children and I have this and that. But, you can sense from some of the questions that that's where a large amount of confusion is.
Right.
So if you can clear that, the other thing is very simple. There's nothing to it.
Correct. Absolutely. And I think one of the things that we had discussed before we did this whole program is do we talk to our children about the will? Because it can be a very traumatic conversation for a child. They always will associate a will means parents are dying or whatever. And that can be extremely traumatic for a child. So I know there is no particular age for it, but I think that initially when a will is made, it should be discussed only between the spouses and maybe with obviously the witnesses and the executor. And we should try to keep the children out of it. Is that something you would agree with, or what is your view on that?
So there are a couple of things. So let me just take a step back first.
Okay.
Then I will come to this. Typically, just making a will is not enough. It's a very important legal aspect that you must have a will.
Yeah.
And also what happens is that in a will, you can specify some assets, right? That, okay, I have this property, as in this house, this apartment, this bungalow, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you can specify that. People typically don't tend to specify the movable assets much. So, and equity shares, mutual funds, those kind of things. So those kind of things you should not define that I have shares of these 10 companies. Aaj will banaya, kal bech diya.
Yeah, correct.
Right. So typically people don't mention the list of equity shares or mutual funds. So they say that this property, this apartment number 5 will go to this person. Yeah. All my shares will go to this person. All my mutual funds will go to this person. Or it can go in the ratio of 50-50. My suggestion is, and we'll come to some of the practical aspects also, know, how to sort of do things simply.
Yeah.
So that is what the will is, right? Now, safe deposit locker hai. People are not aware. There is a safety deposit locker somewhere.
Yeah.
People are not aware what this person's PAN is. People are not aware, I have this apartment, where is that legal documentation kept?
Right.
Okay, people may not be aware that sometimes the employer has taken out a life insurance policy on the employee, and one should now claim that there is a medical insurance policy that you might want to claim the Mediclaim, because some expenses may have been incurred prior to the person passing away. Right. So it is very important to let people know where these assets are lying.
Yeah, absolutely. Where is the locker? Where is your insurance policy? If you have one, all of these other things should be listed out. Correct.
Because even for the executor who's going to oversee the distribution of the property, must firstly know where the will is.
Correct. Yeah.
पहले तो will बनाया है, वो किधर रखा है?
Yeah, people put it in a locked, maybe in a locker or a
so you have to, whoever you're appointing as the executor, who should be somebody who's close to you, who is a trusted person.
Right.
You should let them know that, okay, this will can be found over here.
Right.
Yeah. And then what we do, at least on IndianWillmaker.com, is that we've got a checklist of important information. So you may hand fill it or something like that, because a lot of things now have moved online with passwords and all of that, and the passwords also keep changing.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you might not put the passwords, but you must say that, okay, I have these 5 demat accounts. If you have demat accounts in 5 different places, then you have to tell them that I've got these.
It's over here.
Demat accounts. Nowadays, you get a cash statement, so things are relatively simpler.
Right.
But still let people know where these assets can be found. If I have 2-3 lockers, put it down somewhere.
Right.
Hopefully it won't come in the hands of the tax office, but but it's important to let people know. And that is now when we come to alerting your children.
Correct.
Is that I don't think people should discuss with their kids about how the property is going or getting distributed or anything like that. And Seema, I've told you this before, that I myself, my parents, when I was young, I was a very late kid. So my parents were really aged, and I was really in fear of them passing away when I'm too young.
Yes.
Right. So that always had a fear over me on a lot of things that we did. So I can very readily imagine the trauma that kids could possibly go through if you discuss you're
These
passing
things.
away with them too early on.
Yes.
Yeah.
At the same time, you should sort of let them know that should anything largely happen,
Right.
then, this is the person to sort of speak to.
Yeah, correct.
Right. And that must be the executor. And yeah.
Yeah. And again, going back to the original point, which we are saying again and again, reiterating, which is that if you talk about the will as a part of the financial plan, then we're not talking about death. We are not talking about anything emotional. We are just saying that, all of this stuff that we have built for ourselves, maybe we have 2 apartments or 1 apartment or whatever, is something that we are doing for our children or for our spouse or whoever we are leaving it to. And
Correct.
that person should be aware that it's just part of our financial plan, because security can come through love and it can come through money. Both things can bring you security.
Absolutely, Seema. And that is the way to have that conversation, to say that, listen, I want you to be aware that, this, we have this year, we have that year, we are investing in shares, we are doing this. And hey, by the way, should something happen, then just be aware that this is where things are. This is a person to contact, just as a part of the conversation and as a part of financial planning, of getting them involved as part of the financial decision making. You can discuss this with them.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think these conversations, and this is something that we have done, we struggled with also, and we've kind of tried to do also, is that, maybe by the time they're 10 years old, you have a certain very basic level of conversation with them. When they're about 13 or 14, you have, a slightly elevated level of the conversation. By the time they're 17, 18, they're ready to hear the nitty gritty. And the fear has also gone, because, they now know that, just because they're saying that we have a will doesn't mean they're going to pop off tomorrow, So then they're more readily open to hearing the real stuff. Then when they're, I have a 20-year-old and a 23-year-old. So at this point, we're very, very open, and we're extremely transparent with everything, and who they have to call and what they have to do if anything happens. So, but the other thing that you said, when you said who they have to call, is I think it's very important. When we had this conversation when our kids were 10, about 8 and 11, I think, is when we told them that we tried to keep the executor someone they knew. So that
I was going to ask,
sorry, I missed that. The executor is someone who?
As someone they knew and that they were comfortable with calling. So we said, Kaka is the administrator, executor of this thing. All you have to do is just call him and he will figure.
Is the executor supposed to be a lawyer, or can that be anybody? Who can be an executor?
Actually, it can be anybody. And the executor, if he feels, that help is required, that person can get in a lawyer at that time.
Right. But it doesn't have to be a lawyer. It can be anybody in your family, anybody you know that you trust. And then that person can hire a lawyer if they want.
That's right.
Especially if the kids are younger, right? It has to be someone who they feel comfortable calling.
Right.
Right.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now let's maybe go into the practicalities that you were talking about of the, let our viewers know the, 1, 2, 3, what are the first things they need to do, the second things, the third things, so that, they go to indianwillmaker.com and they go ahead
the steps to
go just do it in this weekend. We are asking all of you viewers to just go to Indian Willmaker and do it this weekend.
In fact, the Indian Willmaker has given us a very generous offer, which we will talk about and we'll put it in our Facebook post. They're actually giving us a wonderful offer. Thank you so much, Kaushal, for that. I will share the details at the end of this conversation. But yeah, you sort of mentioned some of the steps, which is one, you have to be 18 plus. So can you kind of just go over the top 5?
So I will just sort of summarize in some sense. There are largely 3 things that relate to a will. One is the legal aspect. The second is the practical aspect. And the third is really the emotional aspect of dealing with a will, right? So the legal aspect, as I said, it's the least legal of all legal documents. Pretty much it is about who do you want to leave your assets to. Appoint somebody who is going to oversee the distribution of those assets, who is the executor.
Yes.
Make sure that it is signed by 2 witnesses, which is by law.
Yes.
The witnesses cannot be somebody who you have left your property to or whoever is an executor.
Absolutely.
Right. So this much sort of pretty much covers the legal aspect.
Okay.
And as I said, making a will theoretically is really simple.
Right.
And in practice also, the key thing is that keep it simple.
Keep it simple. Yes.
Right. Don't complicate it.
Yeah.
Don't complicate it. Basically try and give a property to a person.
Right.
If you want to give it to more than one person, then make sure that you specify what percentage you want to distribute that property to.
Right.
Describe some properties like real estate. Don't describe other properties like equity shares, mutual funds, those kind of things.
Right.
And basically the will should outlive you. So always have alternates. So for example, if I'm not there, things go to my spouse. If me and my spouse are not there, things go to my children. And because families tend to travel together, if I'm not there, my spouse is not there, my children are also not there.
Right.
Then who should it go to? Right. So then in that case, we come to how the priority gets listed.
Right.
But then also select executors, guardians, witnesses who are younger than you.
Right.
So they must outlive the will as well.
Yeah, correct. And I think, I remember when I spoke to my parents about that they should create a will, the first line of conversation, of course, which is a typical line of, God, you're waiting for me to die? You're looking at my property? And I said one very simple thing to my parents, and they were quite shocked, but they appreciated my honesty, and they sort of actually then went ahead and made the will, is that when it's okay, everybody's going to die, but you have to understand that the people you leave the property to or don't leave the property to, they are the ones who are going to be running around trying to figure out how this whole thing that you worked your entire life for, where you put in your hard work, you put in your savings, you put in your investments, and you did not tell anybody where it is going to go to, is going to end up in the court. And that is not fair on you for doing all that hard work and then just not leaving it to anybody. And it is not fair on the person who's receiving it. So let's be very clear about it. Let's not look at this emotionally. Let's look at it as a financial plan. And when that conversation came up, it's a hard conversation sometimes.
Right.
People do get emotional. So we should expect that. But at the same time, let's think about our children and what will happen to them if we don't clearly assign a very clear plan of distribution of our assets. It's very simple. And your company has absolutely made it so easy for people to just log in. You're offering us a discount code also. And all of that, this weekend, like Deepma said, sit down and make your will, because it's the right thing to do for your children.
Yeah. And even if otherwise, what happens is that, some of the other competitors, you have to make the payment upfront and then you get to make the will. Here, what happens is that you can go through all of the steps. So get your thinking in shape, log on, get your thinking in shape, go through all of the steps, and you only make the payment right at the end when you think that, okay, everything is covered.
Yes.
In fact, we don't even accept payment until all the steps are done, right? So this is 100% automated.
Yeah.
So, the system doesn't even allow you to proceed to make payment unless the will can be generated.
No, and I know that we've had this conversation before where you are so passionate about people being aware of this that you really don't care about that, the payment aspect of it, and you kind of leave it all the way to the end. But what your website does is it sort of nudges everybody to start listing some things. If anything, at least you have done that first step. And I think I really applaud you for that. And
as I mentioned, Seema, this is really not a commercial venture for me. I actually wanted to sort of keep it free until, some lawyer friends who I also, showed the legal, when I made this, I also got some lawyer friends involved to review everything.
Right.
So they said, you must be mad if you keep it free, everybody drive us out of business. So out of that, there is some nominal amount that we charge just to take care of the expenses and all of that.
So let's talk about that nominal amount. I know that the original price of creating a will, and you guys will be stunned when I tell you the price. It's actually 1,400. And Kaushal has very, very generously given us an offer, a discounted price for all of our viewers. For $9.99, you have to use a discount code, which we will share. you get for 1,000 rupees, you can actually sit down, list out all your documents. You will get all the alerts, all the nudging that you need to create a beautiful document that will assign all your assets to your loved ones. And I think I really have to appreciate your work, Kaushal. It's fantastic what you're doing. So
I'm going to go
just coming
on
back
this
to this thing on
weekend.
a few of the practical aspects. One of the things that the website also does is that if you are confused about who to give the property to, it, as I said, guides you into that.
okay.
It also has a checklist of important information. So when we talk about some of the practical aspects, other than keeping it simple, define some assets, don't define some assets, distribute the property, mention the percentages, and some of the things that you might want to do which are outside of the will is that, so for example, if you left some property to somebody, right, it costs no money to change the nomination of that assets to that person.
Absolutely.
So keep it simple, change the nomination to follow the will.
Correct.
Right. That will make things simpler also at the time when the transmission has to happen.
Right? Absolutely.
And leave the will with yourself. Tell somebody where it can be found, or leave it with somebody who you trust.
Yes.
That is an important aspect of things to take care of which are outside of the will.
Yeah, I remember, when we were living in the US, there was a law in the state which said that if anything happens to the parents, the state will take the children away if there is no will, and if there is no nomination of where the children will go. So that fear drove most of the Indian parents who live there to create the will as soon as the child was born, because we don't want our children to be taken away by the state. We don't have the same law in India, but certainly this, if we keep reiterating the point that it is part of the financial plan, it is in the interest of your loved ones that you actually create a will. This is absolutely great advice that what you are, Kaushal, you're giving us.
Yeah.
Today.
And
Kaushal,
finally, in terms of the
going on the website this weekend, and we have our will in place, but I'm going to check if I've done everything, if I've, because I'm sure we may have forgotten some things, or not listed something, or not done something. So thank you so much, first of all, for that offer, but please continue.
most welcome.
So yeah, Kaushal, we hope that, along with your financial planning that you do, and, you're a chartered accountant, you are a certified financial planner, and you're doing an amazing job with this particular aspect. It's an important conversation that we wanted to have, because we really believe that I think we've got to look at this aspect of parenting in a very different way. We want to give security to our children, so let's give it to them. Let's not get embroiled into this auspicious, inauspicious, emotional conversation where actually it is going to work against our kids. Yeah. We don't realize that.
And think of it this way, that you created great amount of treasure, right? And you buried it somewhere, and you don't have a treasure map.
Yes. So think of your will as your treasure map that you've left behind for your loved ones. So Kaushal, thank you so much for being part of our show. We really appreciate your time. I know you are a very busy person, and you gave us the time. So thank you so much for being on our show.
Most welcome. Most welcome.
And we'll see you guys next week for yet another episode of Imperfect Parenting.